Ladies and gentlemen, in this video I'm gonna take you back to the Vienna of 1820. The great Vienna, the great waltz center. So everything that has to do with the waltz, with the dance, you had to be in Vienna. Vienna was the city for the waltz and stayed that for decades. So in this video, I'm going to take you back. How am I going to do that? By showing you a reconstruction of the historical waltz, 1826. This was a dance competition. And also I will connect that to Czerny's famous description of the true waltz in Vienna, which he metronomized in fact, and we're gonna combine this or end this video with a look at the Maelzel directions, because there is a connection between this subject and the Maelzel directions as well. But before we do that, do me a big favor, like and subscribe to this channel. I really want to grow this channel to 100,000, which is kind of a crazy stretch for a channel that actually focuses now on a particular part of performance practice and performance reconstruction. But do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and also a big shout out to my patrons. Love you all. Without them, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. So when we go to Vienna in 1820, 1830, we would see a city that's full of dance. Like Vienna was, still today, Vienna is like the center of the waltz, but in these days, in those time, in that time, it was not different. And so the waltz was something that was like at the core of the Viennese audience. And so dancing that was pretty important. And so let's listen to how these people here who participated in a dance competition actually are like performing the Viennese Waltz. And if we read in the description box, they are pretty serious. So they say this waltz comes from the dance book of 1826, published by the Pendragon Press in 2000. We performed it at the French National Champion of Historical Dance in July 2015, organized by www.carnetballs.com. The costumes are from 1826, and the music inspired by Mozart's Ländlers is the one from the dance manual played on a 1790 pianoforte by Frédéric Lafage. Okay, so they are actually reconstructing a waltz based on this historical dance book. So we are in the midst of the great times in Vienna for this particular dance. And so the question now is if we can learn something from it in regards to our tempo reconstruction, because we are here dealing with a ternary measure, so like 3 beats in the bar. And I hear a lot of you say like and ask, and there's a rightful question. I addressed that before, I will do it again, therefore my metronome is over here. Like, how can we actually use your like back and forth, this double beat, this whole beat system when we have ternary measures? Well, we're going to talk about that. I have some cool stuff for you as well. But for now, let's see how these dancers actually interpreted the waltz from their perspective as dancers, so to say. It's a beautiful surrounding. It's a little bit pity that because these dancers have like big numbers on their back, and it's a little bit funny. But other than that, it's really cool to see. So here we go. When we look at Czerny, he writes in his part 3 of his pianoforte school, and this is a famous example actually, that for the time marked dotted minim, dotted half note 88, a whole bar lasts only during 1 beat of the metronome. And this is at present day the true time of the waltz. So Czerny, I mean, we can have a debate about everything, but let's not debate about the fact that Czerny, who lived almost his entire life in Vienna in that time, would not know what the true waltz tempo was. So this description is really important. Dotted half note 88. Now, we have maybe a little bit of an issue, because when we go back and we listen to this dance, it's much slower. In fact, these people are dancing in a tempo that is dotted half note 38. And now that's a huge difference, 38 to 88. You get where I'm going. So when people say like, yeah, but this is like the literal tempo, I mean, there is also no way to use the metronome in a whole beat system. We're going to come back on that in a second. But taking that tempo literally without thinking, without also thinking about the consequence, like when people really reconstruct an historical dance from a book of the time, where they actually also like do all the passes and all the steps and everything. So then it is not just enough to say like we stop with our interpretation in a single beat, so modern way of that metronome mark that's given by Czerny, and we don't even think further than that. Well, that doesn't change the reality, as we can see here. Now, if I would show you the same people here, but in a tempo of 88, then we get this result. And at first, of course, we know this tempo. Like today, a lot of pieces that are in this kind of waltz tempo are played by orchestras and pianists. And I would say the more historically informed, the faster. Like we recognize this tempo. But now let's see what happens when these dancers really start to turn around. And now you can say, okay, but this was just like a fact. I mean, this is, of course, a sped up version, but I can imagine that people still can, people could dance this. Okay, then the question is, again, why these people are not doing that. And also, like, imagine you are in 1826. I know this is absolutely not an argument in a direct sense, but just imagine you are in these big halls like we're seeing here with all these ladies dressed up like there are, and like very like high society people, and then you start turning around in a way that probably many ladies will faint, because like, you get very dizzy when you do that in an entire evening. But anyways, it's not an argument, just saying that to you. But 88 dotted half note is not like the only tempo of the waltzes that we have. For instance, we have here Fritz Spindler, which is like an unknown name to us today. He was born in 1805 and also wrote kind of a lot of waltzes, apparently. This is a waltz. This is dotted half note 112. Now, there are sources, and again, the book will cover that. I'm not going to go too much in detail here. Once in a while, a video of 50 minutes, as I recently did, is enough. So you will get the history there. There are sources in the 19th century, there's no surprise actually to us, that describe the evolution of the waltz to go faster and faster, even so fast that at the end of the 19th century, some author says like, there is nothing left of the Viennese Waltz of the old days. And so 112 is considerably faster than Czerny, but still a waltz tempo. And even though that this tempo, this waltz, could very well be like a reflection of the sped up versions as we read in the end of the 19th century. But still, it is a waltz that's supposed to be danceable. So also for this version, I used the original footage and I sped it up to 112. And then we get this result. And now we can have a debate about a lot of stuff, but not about the fact that this is like, first, laughable, and secondly, like if you do this for 30 seconds, you will probably drop on the floor, because who can resist like all these turns and this tempo, like whatever. So 112 is like maybe is higher than Czerny, but still we have also Czerny, and that's 88, and then we have the original dance that is here dance like more than half of what Czerny gives. And now, very interesting as well, we come from a fast performance, Now, listen to what happens when you go back to a slower performance. It's a great exercise. Why? Because that's what we are facing with when we talk about whole beat. We are so used to listen to these kind of tempi. And then when you go back, it's of course much slower. It feels almost as if the music stands still. Of course, when you listen like 2 minutes to this recording again, then you reset your brain and expectations. But I can imagine when you come from a kind of skeptical thought, like whole beat cannot be true, and I listen to Beethoven symphonies a lot, and then you go to our version here. By the way, check it out; it's still available. Then yeah, you have this kind of too slow effect. It's only after a while, and while you're not doubting too much, that's a condition, you just accept this as a true result, then this music gets its charm again. It's noble. Yes, it's much slower. It doesn't have this hasty feeling. So 88 is Czerny's tempo. In whole beat, this would be half of that. So we would take 2 ticks in this dotted half note. Now, before you say this is impossible, it's actually very easy. I have here a metronome, obviously. Let's see if you can hear the ticks. 1, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There is nothing difficult in converting like a back and forth, a binary beat, so to say, into a ternary measure. It's also a century-old practice. But there is another source that I would like to connect to that, and that's the Maelzel directions of 1816. And we are rewriting the Maelzel directions for the book now. It's not going to change a lot, so we still have the same interpretation, but more refined. Every line will be explained, and also what we're going to do. Arthur actually is doing. He is our co-author. We have now 3 people working on the book quite intensively. We will bring all the Maelzel descriptions, like every piece that he has written that we know about, together. That will be the first time that actually that's done. And also we find some earlier version than this one. So it's really cool. They all go in the same direction, so to say. And there are a lot of things to say. I'm not going to go too deep in here, but one of the prime arguments, so to say, to use the Maelzel directions, so the text written by Maelzel, the inventor of the metronome, as the ultimate single beat proof, so a proof to keep reading historical metronomes marks as we do today, is partly the last sentence. And the last sentence, it says, it being well understood, let me scroll up a little bit here, it being well understood that in this, as in every other case, each single beat or tick forms a part of the intended time, and is to be counted as such, but not the 2 beats produced by the motion from one side to the other. So if you read this from a distance, you would say like a game, set, match. That's a single beat description, like each single beat forms part of the intended time and not the 2 ticks together. Now, first of all, if that were true, then my question to you would be the following, like if this is really a single beat description that is opposing another system, then what other system can that be other than whole beat? In other words, when we would give everything of the Maelzel directions to a single beat interpretation, then still the Maelzel directions prove the existence of whole beat like big time. The discussion obviously is around the word intended time. And again, I'm not going to stand still here because there's another point I wanted to make. Intended time, in the German translation by Kandler, who published his literal translation of the Maelzel directions in the Allgemeine Musikalische Zeitung. It's important. Why? Because in the same magazine, Beethoven published the metronome marks for his symphonies number 1 to 8. So that's really, really important. But Zeitmaß means tempo, and time can have that meaning. Time can mean time signature, measure, bar, but also tempo. And so, but when time is tempo, then each single beat forms part of the intended time, which then is obviously the metronome mark. How surprising is that in a text that deals with how to use the metronome, how to set your tempo, that Maelzel speaks about part of the intended time in the sense of tempo. And then not the two beats produced by the motion from one side to the other, as you would do with pendulums, which if you have slower tempi, then a pendulum becomes very long. So you will see until end of the 19th century where people introduce pendulums actually to measure time or tempo, that they will stop at 80, for instance, and for all the other movements that you want to reconstruct, you just take double beats. Actually, you go twice. But Maelzel says, no, with the metronome, I can give you a device where also the slow tempi are actually in a small device like that. So in each and every case, also the slow movement, each single tick now, every time forms that single tick part of the intended time. That's the principle of subdivision. But now back to our waltz tempo, because there is something really interesting here. If we read each single beat forms part of the intended time. And if time, from the single beat interpretation, really means time signature or measure, then the last sentence doesn't make any sense. If you have this metronome mark and you say each and every single tick forms part of the intended time, and time means really measure or bar. This is not part of the bar, this is the entire bar. And you can say like, yeah, there are exceptions. Well, no. In this and in every other case, always. So this is untenable. Now, if we go back to Czerny, then you could say like, okay, but listen, Wim, this doesn't make any sense. Because he writes, for example, the time marked as dotted half note 88, consequently, a whole bar lasts only during one beat of the metronome. So one beat of the metronome, I mean, that's clear, right? Like every tick corresponds to the dotted half note. That's what he says. No, that's not what he said. Beat has this double meaning in every language. It can mean a full beat. It can mean single beat. And you see that very clearly again in the Maelzel directions. Why else does he feel the need to explain each single beat or tick? If beat, by definition, would mean in each and every time a single beat, then there would be no necessity for Maelzel to add tick. So when Czerny writes, a whole bar lasts only during one beat, he means the back and forth as a beat. As I said, I'm not going to dive too deep in that, but connecting the waltz tempo to how dancers actually reconstructing that dance based on the steps they had to do, well, then they arrive in a tempo that's actually slower than half of that of Czerny. And then we go to the Maelzel directions, and then we see that actually a dotted half note, or by extension, every metronome mark or note value that covers the entire bar, like a whole note equals a number, or in 2/4 half note, we have plenty of those metronome marks that actually by the internal logic of the Maelzel directions itself, that should not exist. In a whole beat interpretation, there is no problem. So, I thought that was a nice story. Let me know in the comments what you think. I know some of you are actually pretty good dancers themselves. So I'm also looking for your comments and your experiences with dances like this and in combination with metronome marks. So that's all I've got for you today. Check out our Patreon site. Link is in the description. Thank you for watching, and we see each other very soon again. Bye.